What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Professional Athlete Podcast. I am your host, Ken Gunter, and we have another awesome show today. Full disclosure, when I was thinking about putting together the podcast, I had a number of guests. I say guests with quotes around them, because at that point, no one knew that I was going to start this thing. Today's guest, Nick Littlehales, was one of the folks that I said I need to have on this show. So it happened sooner than I expected, due mostly to his generosity and willingness to reach back out to me. But the reason I'm so excited is he is a sleep expert, and he is the founder of Sports Sleep Coach. So we've had some sleep experts on the show already, but what's so interesting is that he specifically works with elite athletes at the highest level all across the world to help improve not only the quality of their sleep, but using their sleep as a means of recovery. So I know there's a lot of people out there that are thinking like, oh, he works with athletes. This guy handed out a bunch of pillows to a junior college soccer team. No. Okay, I'm talking Cristiano Ronaldo and the rest of the team at Manchester United and numerous other prominent Premier League clubs. He was an instrumental part of British cycling, where his sleep performance helped transform the team as part of their famed aggregated marginal gains approach. He's worked with drivers on the Formula One circuit. Speaking again about cycling, he worked with Team Sky, who competes in the Tour de France, and with Nick's help, propelled a British rider to the podium in just 3 years after the initial formation of the team. And what's amazing is that that's actually 2 years faster than the ambitious goal that team had set for itself, and they've gone on to win 7 of the last 8 editions of the Tour de France. So just complete domination. He's also worked with guys in a lot of major American sports, NFL, NBA, and more. You know, his track record is stellar, but what I really appreciate is I found out about him through his book, Sleep. And what I was particularly drawn to is he outlines his 7 key sleep recovery indicators. But more importantly, he outlines practical steps that you, the listener or reader, can take to begin to sleep better immediately. And, you know, I like to bring on people that I know personally because I want to introduce you to people that I personally have seen a tremendous amount of value from. This is one of those folks. His book has certainly helped my sleep. It's certainly helped reshape my perspective on sleep and the role it plays, not only in athletic recovery, but basically in my ability to be a better person, a better father. So this is one of my favorite conversations. I know that everyone's going to enjoy it. He's going to touch a little bit on his R90 sleep technique that he's developed over the years. And we're going to talk about how you can actually keep in touch with him to work with him on your own sleep. So with that, if you're enjoying the show, again, thank you to everyone who's left us a review and those who have reached out with positive feedback. Really appreciate it. If you get a chance, leave us a review or a rating within Apple. It certainly helps. I'll try not to say that every week, but just want to give a shout out to all the folks who are reaching out. We're really grateful for it. And on top of that, make sure to stick around for the Run It By My Wife segment with Sonia, where she makes a big announcement. It's not babies, folks. It's chickens. So with that, without further ado, let's welcome Nick to the show, and I hope everyone enjoys. Here we go.
I gotta get up. I got too much to do. Yeah, I gotta get going. I gotta talk to you. It's time to start the show.
Well, first and foremost, thanks for joining the show. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Ken.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about this before we started, but ironically, I'm coming off a terrible night of sleep.
Okay.
So to give you a little background, I've got 3 kids over here. One of which is a 3-month-old who coincidentally slept really well last night, but my 2-year-old wandered into our room at like 2 a.m. And so I spent the next like 2 to 3 hours just trying to get him back to sleep. So I thought, like, how fitting. Okay. I'm about to do a podcast with a sleep specialist, and I'm coming in here groggy and dragging. So forgive me if I'm a little slow during any points of this conversation.
It sounds like you're coming in like most normal people do every day.
Yeah, you know what? I
as
think
recovered
about
as they would like to be.
Exactly. Well, and that's one of the topics I wanted to get your opinion on. Is
Don't
this
have kids,
idea?
Ken.
You say don't have kids, or you don't have
Yes,
kids?
top tip.
Yeah,
You know?
don't have.
Don't have kids.
You know what? I've thought about this a lot, and for people who complain about how busy they are, and people are busy. Don't get me wrong, and there's people who are doing a lot of things with their time. Like until you've had kids, like you actually don't know how busy or stressed or tired you can actually be.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you have a dog, don't compare it to a kid. Number one, because that'll cause any parent to want to like jump over the table and take a hold of you by the collar.
Dogs are amazing
Yes.
polyphasic sleepers, you know, which is what's more natural to the human being than sleeping in blocks, because they just nap it out when they can. They're always alert. They're always active. They're always this, and they just take their moments when the moments arise. They're amazing. We should learn a lot from dogs.
So that's interesting. So and maybe that's a really good place to start. Like, could we just talk about kind of like the basic principles of sleep? Because you mentioned dogs are polyphasic sleepers. That is probably not where my mind would have gone as far as like where should I look to for a good example of like optimum sleep habits. So can we kind of start by talking about, in your opinion and the research that you've done, what are kind of like the core principles of sleep that really every person would benefit from just understanding about themselves?
Well, I come from I'm not unintelligent, but I come from a non-academic background as far as sleep is concerned. I fell into the sleep industry, loved sport as a teenager, like most teenagers do. But I fell into the sleep industry, spent a lot of time in it in various different roles. Sort of in a bit of a midlife crisis, maybe in my early 40s, just realized that all the things I've been looking at and working in, and from the academic side, the clinical side, and all sorts of that, basically the population just takes it for granted. It's not a performance criteria. It's a health pillar that's uneducated and lost, and I should go off and do something else.
Yeah.
I fell into the world of sport. And over the last 2 decades, there's been certain things that I've been involved with that allowed me to examine some of that knowledge and maybe just redefine it for those individuals. So I think that turned itself into what's called an R90 technique. It identifies over those 2 decades what I believe are the 7 key sleep recovery indicators. It's about awareness, education, understanding, interventions, little practical behavioral changes. And we've been applying those to any organization or individual. And that's also, we were talking before this, some 4 years ago, 2016, I got asked to write a book about that process. It's in 15 languages around the world now. It's still being published. It's as you know, it's a very simple read. But inside of there were these 7 steps. And to answer your question, the key things are the first 3. And the one is, tap circadian rhythms in your browser. And maybe for the first time, just get a relationship with this sun up and sundown process that rolls around our planet. It's completely irrelevant to everything else that goes on the planet, viruses or whatever. It goes on every day. It creates circadian rhythms, light, dark, and diminished light changes and temperature. It creates an internal clock, our biological clock, an external clock, an internal clock. Our brains, as human beings, and all our bodily functions are completely connected to this process. And, over the generations of us being on this planet, we've continued to move further and further away from it. So there's a kind of a desynchronized generation going on. And that principally, when you boil it down, is just your exposure to light. And what type of light. The second one is we have a natural genetic twist, a sleep characteristic called a chronotype. whether you're a morning person, owl or lark, an AM or a PMer as we refer to them. And that little genetic twist is all about this relationship with the sun going around our planet and those circadian rhythms. And it's about how quickly you will produce a hormone called serotonin in the pineal gland in your brain, which tells the brain to unsuppress everything and make you active. And there's a little phase delay. So some of us, if we're night timers, the start of our day is not the same as a morning chronotype. And that's simply about the production of this hormone serotonin. So light plays a big trigger to that. The third one is, up until electric light came into our world, you just tap that in your browser and you'll see that human beings slept in a polyphasic manner. There was 4 major sleep-wake cycles, biphasic, triphasic, multiphasic, crazy-phasic. And it was only when electric light came on that we started to adjust the third phase of our 24 hours between sort of like 6 p.m. in the evening into 12 o'clock at night. And we started to change that particular phase to be more active. Yeah. And we started just sleeping nocturnally in a monophasic block. And that's where get your 8 hours. So wake up in the morning when there's only 8 hours left before you got to do it again.
Yeah.
Get your 8 hours. And maybe that particular shift from electric lights, we've been getting away with it because we've not been looking at it like the other 2 health pillars, exercise, nutrition, hydration. But I think the shift over the last 2 decades, driven by technology and various other things, is really examining our ability to just sleep in one block.
Yeah.
So we've been using that process, those first 3 things, quite specifically to educate an individual of the power of being synchronized to that process that doesn't change, to understanding what it does to you, to be able to sort of manage their everyday relative to their chronotype, and to use the polyphasic approach just to deal with the ever-increasing non-human multi-schedules of this crazy, let's bust every day, every minute out of it type of world we live in.
Yeah, and you said something there too, actually at the beginning of the podcast when you said the fact that I'm coming in a little sleep deprived, I'm just like everyone else. It's almost like we're getting away with it. And I think there's a number of like health indicators that show that in actuality, we're not getting away with the lack of sleep, but it exposes itself less because it seems like kind of as a culture, at least in Western culture, like by and large, we're all in some respects sleep deprived, right? So relatively, comparatively, it's maybe not standing out as much. Yeah, we're all kind of functioning on with the same level. Yeah.
A lot of the research you ever see is maybe 30 or 40% of the population in any particular part of the world suffers from sleep deprivation or something. Well, right. I haven't met anybody who gets 8 hours a night in a solid block, 365.
Yeah.
I haven't met anybody who's got occupations that really allow that in any consistent period, like you running into your kids and, you've got 3 kids, so that means a number of years, if not many, many years of disruptive patterns. So it's kind of like, yeah, I think everybody, 100%, do not actually reveal levels of recovery that allows them to have a consistent personal best more often than not. I think we have been, taking it for granted. So we create a very random approach to it. We worry about it. And so I always remind people that, every generation faces stuff and all that sort of thing, Ken. But, I've been around for nearly 60 years on this planet. And really, we should be the healthiest, fittest, most knowledged human population that's ever been on this planet. So why every day do I hear about social issues, mental health and well-being, suicide, burnout, type 2 diabetes, all sorts of things that are where we are seeing increases in. And you have to say it's just our ability as human beings, because we've got no education, nothing gets passed on from parents, kids don't get educated to all these basic principles, and it's I tested it with sometimes if you try and tell somebody to stop worrying about something or chill out and trying to coach them, you don't tell them what to do, you take them on a journey where they end up there. And we just took them all camping, into the mountains, into the woods.
Yeah, okay.
And all that happened very quickly is there's just a little bit of polyurethane and a zip between us and the outside world, aka a tent. There's a little bit of foam or something blown up on the floor for us to sleep on.
Yep.
And very, very quickly, even with connectivity, we start to wake up naturally. We eat outside, even if it's under a canopy, because it's raining, but we're outside. Yeah. We take advantage of the first part of the day to midday, and then we take a break, fuel up, hydrate, have a little break. Then we take advantage of the second half of the day, and the light disappears. We stop. We're in melatonin land now. We build a fire. We have something to eat. We entertain each other. We fall asleep, and we go again. So visualization, circadian rhythms, synchronized, chronotypes. Yeah. Suddenly, a very short space of time, we're all like smiling and we're happy. We put things in context. We don't react to things as strongly as we should. We seem to be more productive. We seem to be not wasting our time. We seem to get things done. And you just go, how far away are you right now from that process?
Yeah.
And it may not relate to everybody. If you don't like going camping, you don't like being outside, you love living in the city. But the reality is, your brain and bodily functions is called Ken. My brain and bodily functions is called Nick. But our brain and bodily functions are completely synchronized to this planet and that process. And that's one of the biggest realizations as to, you can actually do more by doing less at the right time in the right place.
Yeah. And, I'm just thinking through, I lived in New York for 5 or 6 years. And I loved it. And it's a lot of fun, especially when you're younger. But I mean, you're basically hemmed off from anything that is kind of that natural connection with the planet that you're referring to, right? Unless you make like a concentrated effort to go to Central Park every day. I mean,
you're isolated New Yorker, is that?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. I mean, you're boxed in, you're surrounded by artificial light.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and one thing that I've kind of found in my own life is that, and we can talk about this too, lack of sleep is compounding, but like stress is compounding, and it's just, if you never get a reprieve from kind of this constant always on, it just snowballs. And unfortunately, what I found is it'll snowball to the point where it then affects my sleep, which is the one thing that could probably actually really help me recover from some of those, physical and mental stressors that I'm dealing with.
Well, you asked me a question before the podcast, what wouldn't we like to talk about? But I'm going to raise it. And we have a pandemic going on at the moment. And the one thing that, you see plastered everywhere is that this whole process of helping your brain throughout your day, because you're not in control of your sleep when you're in a sleep state, your brain is in control. So you have to remember it's everything you do from the point of wake and throughout your day and how you're synchronized to this process and everything you're doing that enables when you do enter a sleep state for any period of time, your brain can reveal what you want because you're not in control of it now. And part of that process, being in that sleep state, is rolling through various stages in nice rhythms and patterns and cycles, as what we all should know about. And part of that is a lot about rejuvenation and renovating and helping things. And certain stages of those, certain sleep stages are deemed to be more beneficial in that area, particularly the deeper sleep stages, REM and non-REM. All the stages are of benefit. But one of the things that's going on there is your ability to keep your immune system at its highest level.
Right.
And, suddenly when things like this happen, suddenly that research and that knowledge sort of comes to the fore, because it's sort of saying, if you're not sleeping well, then your immune system will be lower and you're more likely. Yeah. But we should have been talking about that way before viruses, It's about your resilience. So sleeping or redefining your recovery approach as a human being really does protect yourself. And we look at, if you redefine your approach, I mean, you've read my book and you've made some changes, Ken. I know you've told me, so I'm not putting words in your mouth.
No.
If you redefine your approach and maybe take the emphasis away from this word called sleep, because it immediately somebody's mindset goes, oh, that's what I do at night. It's a complete waste of time. I don't really get much benefits out of it. Can I look at something else? So it's about mental and physical recovery. It's about human recovery performance. It's about cycles. It's about these sort of things, putting these things together. And then what happens is rather than thinking about, am I improving my sleep quality, what you're doing is creating a more resilient human being.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? And a more resilient human being means that when I'm visualizing something in front of me, whether it's words, it's verbal, or I'm looking at things, it's the way those things get processed is all about where my brain and bodily functions and certain hormones are at a particular time. And I try to, I'm a bit of a maverick in this world, Ken, so excuse me, but
no, please.
When you're working with all sort of different types of athletes at different levels of education or knowledge or parenting, you've got to find a language, you've got to find a way to redefine it for them. And sometimes I just say to them, look, if we spent all our time outside today, then it's currently, 2:30, 14:35 in the UK. And that's where the sun is part of this natural process. It doesn't follow a clock. It's just rolling around and creating this exposure to light. Now, if it's 14:35 outside, it should be 14:35 in my main body clock in my brain.
Right.
It should be 14:35 in every little cell in my body, because they're all clocks. So if you think about everything in your body is a clock, and your brain is the main one. So if it's 14:35 up there, the reason it's 14:35 up there is because that's the point in time that we've put a clock on the sun going around our planet. We gave it a 24-hour, well, it's actually a little bit more, but it's a 24-hour clock we put on it. So as it rises, we put a clock on it, and then it goes around and it comes back. So we put a clock on it so we can measure its progress. But so if it's 12:35 outside, it should be 12. If it's 2:35 outside, it should be 2:35 in my brain and 2:35 everywhere. So if I look at something, then everything's being processed in a manner of balance. Yeah. However, if because of 24/7 and scheduling and changing behaviors and all this sort of stuff and everything that we do, that we're not synchronized with that process, then it might be 2:35 outside because the sun's taking no notice of us. But in my main body clock in my brain, it could be, I don't know, 6 o'clock at night. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning. In every cell of my body, it could be 3 o'clock, 3:30, 2 o'clock. I don't know, whatever. So I think one of the aspects of why we're looking at this more significantly than ever before is that whilst we adopt a very proactive approach to health and well-being, what we eat, what we do, health and exercise, that's fine. But actually, because we're so desynchronized, that these things are not being processed in the manner that we think they are. So there are always demographics of people who are absolutely smashing it and achieving all sorts of wonderful things. But there is also that other area where the consequences of this, we've got an ever-increasing addictive behavior. And that doesn't mean hard drugs. It doesn't necessarily, but we are adapting our behavior to combat or try to cope with a constant level of sleep deprivation, fatigue, mental and physical recovery, that it's now reached a point where we certainly need to change our behavior, right, around this particular area. And you will know from your, you are still an athlete and you're still there, but you know that principally a lot of my clients just go, Nick, can you just not get this sleep thing done in like 20 minutes a day? It's just a waste of time, man.
Exactly.
I'm just lying there doing nothing. I'm not in control of it. I don't really, sometimes I feel great. Sometimes I try and do 8 hours, 10 hours, 9 hours, because sleep's really important. But, can't we just smash it in 20 minutes or even less? I said, well, if you actually adopt this approach, you will feel as though you're actually sleeping less, but you're not. You're actually moving through every 24 hours in a really balanced way. It's a great technique, and I think the wonderful thing about it, shouting my rooftops, is that I don't know about you, but when I got to the end of writing my book, I just thought I could just crack on with this right now without any sort of investment whatsoever.
Yes. Yeah. And that's something that I really appreciated. One is how applicable, I assume the book was intended to be, right? It took away,
it was
I
written
think,
by me. It was never going to be complicated.
Hey, there we go. But no, I mean that. And for people listening, I can certainly confirm that, after reading it, and as I was reading it, as I got through, separate chapters, I was like, oh, let me try and implement that tonight, or let me change my thinking around how I approach this. And
you even thought, I already knew that.
That's a good point too. Yeah, it's because a lot of this stuff. So that's one thing that I'm learning, because I've been really fortunate so far in this podcast to talk to a lot of either experts or people who are helping elite athletes do incredible things. And more often than not, the answers are not complex. It's often validating what should have been intuitive and just kind of embracing that consistently over time.
There you go.
And one of the things that you said, and you said it multiple times now, but I really I think it's important for people to have this driven home, is there almost needs to be a shift in the way that you think about the role sleep plays, right? It's not dead time, right? It truly is recovery. And while, I brought you on because the work you're doing with, elite athletes is it's incredibly interesting, but to your point, that recovery is instrumental in everything from your immune system to your metabolism to all these other areas of your life. And it really should be treated as a critical, and I guess, I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, like, 1/3 of that, the kind of core principles of your approach to getting fit, right? If you're working out, you're eating right, like sleep is that third piece that's the recovery that you need to take just as seriously. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, because, I've got experience of it personally myself. I've got an extended family. I've got 5 grandchildren now and probably more to come. And they've...
Congratulations.
The word granddad, hearing it every day makes you feel like, wow, my life is about to end. But because I stopped being called Nick anymore, or Dad, it's now Granddad.
Granddad. Oh yeah.
Granddad. Wow. Granddad. Wow. But anyway, no, I think it's I've always been fascinated by it. I don't know why. My father, who died quite young, died when I was quite young, when I was 17, was an engineer. He helped develop something called petrol injection. He was an innovator. He made cars go faster and shove petrol into pistons quicker and all that sort of stuff, and ended up with Formula One and everything else. So I suppose, within my DNA somewhere, I'm a bit of a re-engineer, a bit of a inventor, a bit of a redefiner. I don't know. I'd like to think that's what my father left behind, but I think it's just one of those things. I cannot understand why this has been so ignored.
Yeah.
I think it's great that we're looking at it now, but there's such a lot going on out there, Ken. You know, when you ever open up a health pillar like this, you know, there's $1 trillion black hole there. And everybody, you know, like I said, like maybe 100% of everybody is without that education is just struggling through. And there is an opportunity for people to make money out of that. And so suddenly you've got eye masks and earplugs, you've got supplements, you've got melatonin supplements. You can access most of the stuff you should have medically prescribed, like sleeping tablets, caffeine supplements. You've got trackers, you've got apps, you've got all sorts of stuff going on. And if the population was educated in the first place, a lot of these things would never enter your life. Because it's such a natural process. And so you just see people diving into, I mean, the first point of call for most people when they really struggle to sleep is they sort of go, what's your top tip, Nick? Can I do it now and sort it? And I go, no, you can't just do that and stop that. You know, it's not like a big subject. You don't have to be worried about it. But, you know, like you said, you sort of read through the book and it just goes, actually, that's what I do anyway. Or I kind of knew that anyway. Or yes, I am a nighttime chronotype. I've always thought that, but I've never done anything about it. But maybe I will now. You've got kids. So suddenly you start going, oh, look, that one is a nighttime chronotype. That one is a morning chronotype. That's an amazing first step, isn't it? Because how you manage your children into the world is going to be significantly different. Can I use the word significantly different? To the way that your parents brought you into the world.
Yeah. I would say that's true. I mean, you would hope that's true as well, right? Because like, as you said, we at this stage of humanity, I mean, we should be the healthiest, the most educated, you know, so it's like, I almost feel like it's incumbent upon the parent to kind of like try and absorb as much as they can to try and create a better, you know, environment for your kid to grow up in. And that's not to take anything away from the previous generation, but I think the hope for each parent or each generation is that the generation that comes after, you know, has improved upon what they've already done. So,
I mean, I would say everybody says, you know, we're in a big social experiment. Well, we certainly are now, if we weren't before.
Yeah, we're right smack dab in the middle.
We're in one social experiment of learning how to deal with technology and social media and all that sort of stuff. And now we're in another one. So amazing times for Generation X, the millennials, whatever you want to call them. But it is, you know, for that older generation, it is for them to sort of, you know, stand up and use that knowledge and experience and maybe challenge a few things to help them, you know, because rather than fight them or, you know, shut your tech down. Blue light is bad for you, says Ken to his children. And I say to Ken, when did you first learn how bad blue light was for you? Because it's in the sun, it starts our day, it's part of our circadian rhythm. That blue energy light, as part of that spectrum of the sun, triggers serotonin in your brain that unsuppresses everything, creates your mood, your alertness, your decision-making, everything about you. It starts your day. Why are you telling your kids that blue light is bad for you?
Right. Is it more than about redefining, you know, when blue light can be harmful?
Yeah. So if you know, with all this knowledge you've got, it's like whether you like camping or not, you're a New Yorker, so maybe you don't, I don't know. But you just go, kids, we're going camping.
Yep.
And while you're out camping, along that whole process, like we talked about before, you're just making little good parental messages. We've all woken up happy today. That's because the sun and that blue light is creating this serotonin, kids, and it's making us, it's like plugging your phone in and getting it recharged. All right, Dad, yeah. Because we're not going to go off on this big walk without charging up our iPads and our phones, are we? Because we need the GPS to find the bloody trees. Excuse my friend. But it kind of puts it in context, and everything gets put in context, and you're able to educate them. You're able to learn along that process.
Yeah. No, I like that. And that's, well, and so actually to transition a little bit, because here's something, as we as a society, I think, need to start kind of taking stock of just how important sleep is. It sounds like maybe, and you can tell me if this is a incorrect assumption or not, but the professional sports world kind of has been more receptive to this earlier on. Can you talk about a little bit of the work that you've been doing with a lot of these elite sports organizations and elite athletes, and kind of like what exactly it is they're bringing you and your team in to do?
It's, over the last 2 decades, Ken, we've been working with individual organizations, individuals along that route, but we're not really touching a big percentage of the sporting population. There are just certain groups or organizations at certain points along this particular journey that do actually realize that this area is important. Mm-hmm. But it's a big jump from taking it for granted, not a performance criteria, to suddenly starting to go on that journey that it might be, or it could be, or it is. And so inevitably it's generally these days created by the problems that they're experiencing. So they are ever increasing schedules. They are not taking notice of the impact on the human being. And it's invariably when they hit a particular crisis situation is when they suddenly pick up the phone.
So reactive more than...
Yeah. It is a bit like that, I have to say. So there are... Like
most things, to be fair.
Yeah, like most. But in some respects, when I started working with British cycling and Team Sky over here in the UK and things like the Tour de France, a big global sport, and a very intimidating sport, things like a Grand Tour, like the Tour de France or Giro d'Italia or Vuelta, it was more about, it wasn't about the problems, it was about performance. And that was, as many people probably are aware, but maybe not, the strategy that they applied at that particular time was the aggregation of marginal gains. And that
I'm so interested in this. Yeah, and I that might have actually been one of the ways I found out about you. But and if you were going to already, but if you wouldn't mind, just give people maybe a quick explanation of what that is, because I think it's so fascinating.
I think at the time they had a strategy, they had a goal, they had a trigger, which was to put a British rider on the Tour de France podium within 5 years. Within that, there was the track cycling, male and female, and also Paralympic track cyclists. And the strategy sort of was born out of, let's collectively get all the best people we can on the planet. We need to cover every single aspect, because the bike itself, we can have the most engineered bike possible, but so can every other competitor. We can have, the clothing, the helmet, all that equipment side, but everybody else can do the same. So what's going to be the difference? And that would be the engine on the bike, aka the human. And if we can make that engine more resilient, then maybe at certain times, particularly through those events, we'll be able to, come to the top when it matters.
Sure.
So as they went through everything, they came across sleep. You can't ignore that because, 30% of every bit of your day, if you want to look at it like that. So the clinical side of sleep are already concentrating on sleep disorders. Well, that's not any use to us because none of us have got any sleep disorders in that sense. Mm-hmm. So we need somebody who's going to apply something that we can all practically achieve. So that's where the R90 technique was umbrellaed. So we looked at these 7 areas with each individual athlete and a group. We looked at the event itself, and we looked to change every approach that we did along that route. And eventually it became successful. But it was literally that if that particular rider was brought up in a city with a particular circadian rhythm, with a particular internal body clock, with a particular set of circumstances around them, little cultural things like smells, the foods they ate, the timings, whether that rider was from Spain or whether that rider was from Italy, because there was British cycling, but there's also Team Sky, which was not British, it was a team.
Right.
And so you look at those things, you bring them all together and go, well, okay, so this is how we need to wander through this whole process. So we started profiling each individual, which is very commonplace in sport. But we found out all these little things that sort of meant something to that person and not to others. We looked at their environments that they were brought up in and where they used to sleep and what they used to sleep on. We looked at all of those things and we started to, correlate those things and put them into some perspective. And we started on a couple of early tools, where Giro d'Italia and Vuelta, where we tried things. In sport, everybody loves to measure. Of course they do.
Yeah,
we have to measure things. But when we went on this process, we just realized that in this particular area, measuring it was intrusive. It created counterproductive side effects. The fact that there was so many variables going on that we just needed a set of protocols that managed recovery and revealed the best it possibly could, but don't try and measure it. Don't try and analyze it, because that creates another level of scrutiny and anxiety. Yeah. So don't laugh, Ken, but even inside a peloton, for anybody who's listening who knows about cycling, inside a peloton, there are certain cyclists having a nap.
What do you mean, having a nap?
Well, they're being dragged along by the peloton. They've come off the front. They're inside the peloton. They're being protected. The wheels are going around. They're expressing less energy. They're actually in a recovery period because every other cyclist around them is protecting them as a team. And
you're kidding me.
Well, it is. If anybody knows about cycling, that's what it is. When you drop back into the peloton, it's almost like you're not turning the wheels around because the peloton's turning your wheels around. So when you start to look at these things, it's like, right, I'm going to take some recovery period. We've got 200K to do today.
Right.
And you can't do that all at the front because you're buffering the wind. It's far more energy. So you have certain team members who go up there and take the hit for the team. But the person at the back is going to reveal their talents when it matters. Right? And so there's all these little facts. And we even went, but I think the thing about I was on the periphery, but inside of it. But the thing that just made a massive difference to all of these things is just some of the little practical things. So one of the things we talked about one day was we're sleeping in for 3 weeks, different hotels, different environments, different mattresses, different pillows. Mm-hmm. There's other people using these environments, which we don't even know about. We don't know what they're bringing into this room, aka COVID-19. It's about what's in this room? Who was in here last night? Whatever.
Yeah.
We're taking elite athletes to do a massive event for 3 weeks. Serious physical and mental, crazy.
Yeah.
And so we just went, look, this is what they do at home. Let's check it out. Light, dark, and temperature. What are they sleeping on? We need them to be in the right sleeping position, fetal on the opposite side to their dominant side. We want them to be in complete comfort. We want good postural balance. We also want to know what is the washing powder they're using. Because that's a familiarization thing about smells. Have they got kids? Have they got that? We jumbled all those things in. And so in the end, we would have a sleep kit that would go with the individual athlete, would go into each hotel, and we'd ignore what's in there.
Yeah.
We would just roll out their sleep kit with the right smells, improve the air, wipe all the surfaces down. You know, when you've asked me just to reflect on that particular thing, which I hadn't planned today, like most things, it's almost like where I am now. You know, when I woke up and went to my office, I'm wiping the handles, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm washing my hands. You know, back then it was all about that. It was about how to wash your hands.
Right.
Because you might pick up a virus that's been left in a room week 1 by somebody else you don't even know about in that hotel room. And by week 3, it's now kicking in. So you can't make the final stages of the Tour de France. So it was, you know, when you talk about aggregation of marginal gains, I have to say it became really intensive, because once you start that process, then you start to think about everything.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. I mean, we're talking about, would our bottoms be a little bit cleaner if we use 3-ply tissue paper or 2-ply tissue paper?
Okay. So
Would
you guys
they be
went
cleaner if we wiped forwards or backwards twice or 3? So suddenly you become totally obsessed by there is a gain, whether it's point this or a 1%. There is a gain everywhere for us.
Well, and the team had tremendous success, right? Not to give the story away, but is it safe to say that, you know, British cycling at that point was average at best?
Non-existent.
Non-existent. Okay. And then, I mean, I think the whole reason that this story has been so fascinating is they accomplished their goal, right?
Yeah. But not only with putting what now Sir Bradley Wiggins on the Tour de France podium. I mean, Chris Froome, part of Team Sky and now Team Ineos, has been doing it for fun since. You know, so the first one was a challenge, but now they know. So they just flick Chris Froome up there for fun. Geraint Thomas, you know, another part of the team. So, you know, so everybody turns around and goes, they must be on drugs. They can't keep doing this. It must be on drugs. But it, you know, I won't even go into that particular area because it's, but I think it just proved that there was one area of this aggregation of marginal gains. They had the best coaches on the planet. They had the best sports science, their best data collection. They had the best equipment. They had, you know, suits made by bespoke scientists to create aerodynamics, helmets, this and everything else. But the one thing that had never entered into this world before was sleep. And
it sounds so silly because, I mean, and I understand how it happens. Like, I neglected it in my own life, so I have firsthand experience at overlooking it. But I mean, quite literally, it should take up roughly, you know, somewhere around a third of your day. And it's just, for whatever reason, we all overlook it. Even people who are looking for advantages wherever they can find them. Right. So it's just, it's such an,
it's only because it's something that you're not in control of. You know, when you go to sleep, your brain takes over. So, you know, in our psyche is if I want to go faster or jump higher or get the ball between the posts better, or come on as a kicker, or I'm a quarterback, or I'm a basketball player, NBA, NHL, rower, poker player, e-sporter, whatever you are, is the difference between a great amateur professional, a professional, a top flight elite athlete or player, and then there is the je ne sais quoi. And that is the person. And you can count these people on your hand, basically, in life. They're just able to go to another level.
Yeah.
So we don't know how much sleep Usain Bolt has had over his career. We've never tracked it. We don't know how much REM sleep he got, whether he slept at all, how many hours he got, how much light sleep he got. We have no idea. So now we're just in that particular point, is that can we create some data, some knowledge that allows us to understand how humans perform at their best?
Yeah.
And the one thing that has never been looked at is this subject of sleep. So I think everybody should make it the first pillar, not the third one, and being ignored.
Yeah.
Because if I start my day really well because of this knowledge, circadian rhythms, chronotype, light, get the exposure up. I'll give you a little thing you can do in a minute, Ken, which will make you laugh.
Okay.
And everybody else can.
Good.
Is suddenly I seem to have the time to buy food and cook it from scratch instead of just grabbing something. I seem to have a little bit more time to go, I don't need to do that. I can do this. I seem to, something happens that's quite serious and I just go, yada, yada. So once you put recovery in that perspective, your productivity and your ability to perform at much higher levels more consistently and more sustainably reveals themselves really, really quickly.
Well, and I think that's, whether you're a professional footballer in the Premier League or you're just trying to show up as the best parent you could be or the best part, everyone could benefit from trying to put your best version of yourself forward. Okay, so you said you had a tip. I'll take any and all tips as people listening.
Well, just to segue into this, we had it's part of your world as well. We had an NFL player was born on the West Coast, East Coast, plays on the West Coast. There's lots, you have a lot of issues like that about a lot of traveling, particularly in hockey, NHL, and stuff like that, and NBA.
Oh, it's crazy what they put those guys through.
Crazy what they do, right?
And it's all about money, first of all, which I get. But those schedules that they put some of these guys through, when I see them document the road trips and the time zones they jump through, I'm like, how does an average person, how does an elite athlete deal with that and still perform at a high level?
Well, I'm sure we could do another podcast about that one, couldn't we? Because of your own personal experience. But it is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's non-human. Yeah. And it's certainly not getting better. So it was just that one particular player was experiencing lots of problems. And along the whole route of investigating all of this, the sort of outcome was is they were simply born on the East Coast and played in the West Coast. And their natural circadian rhythm, their natural body clock and everything else was set by their formative years of where they were brought up. And then you shift them to another circadian rhythm, another time zone for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
And they're always fighting that, but they don't realize it, and neither does everybody else. So there's one little thing to think about. You said earlier on, New Yorker, get a bit isolated, Central Park and all that sort of stuff. Well, When you look
Right.
at humans on this planet, Ken, there's no point telling some, Ethiopian marathon runners about getting your bedroom at 16 to 18 degrees.
Right.
Because, there's North and South Hemisphere. What about Finland? What about Iceland? What about this? What about that? There's humans all over the place, sleeping in different environments. We can sleep anywhere, anytime, on anything. We get too focused on, we've got to have some specific solution to this, but it's not. It's extremely natural. So as soon as I started hearing, coaches and stuff or parents going, shut your tech down, blue light's bad for you. It'll keep you awake all night because it creates serotonin, I was just, whoa. We haven't even started to educate these people on how brilliant blue light is. So it's about under and overexposure. It's about learning about these things so you can really manage it, because it's amazing. It's amazing. It's such a trigger to everything that we do. So to stop that process, I just said to a bunch of athletes, just download this app onto your phone right now. It's called a free light meter. It's called a free lux meter. I don't even want you to pay for it. And just download it onto your device. Now you've got a little dial, and it's just using the camera on your phone. So let's not get any science into this yet. Let's just see it. Right, so now we've got a little dial, and it says 110 lux. What's lux? Well, let's just don't get too... Lux is the way you measure light, how strong it is. Not dangerous, just... it's a bit like whether you're getting enough voltage out the plug socket to charge your phone up.
Got it.
Right. It's like wattage. It's like voltage.
Yeah.
Right. So we're standing here, and it says 110 lux. Let's move 1 meter back, and now it moves to 90 lux. Let's move 1 meter to the left, as if we're dancing, and it says 10 lux. Let's bend down. Let's move near our computer. Let's move near this. Let's move near this light. Now let's move to the window. Oh my God, it's gone up to 3,000 lux. Let's just step outside. Oh my God, it's 80,000 lux. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Nothing? Is it relevant? Well, outside, that sun, in 2 phases, 3 phases of the day, is hitting you with 80, 100,000 lux. And inside of there's that little blue energy light.
Yeah.
And it's creating this lovely balance between when you produce melatonin, which chills you out, makes you suppress, puts things in context, and then you've got this serotonin that makes you active and intense. Right. So let's just check today. You woke up in the morning, your curtains are shut, blackout blinds, heard about that, haven't you? Yeah, blackout blind, got those, Nick, yeah. Fancy mattress, da-da-da. What was the light in your bedroom when you woke up? 6 lux. Okay. If you woke up outside in that tent, as we talked about, it would be 100,000 lux. Wow. Okay. Let's move to the kitchen. Let's move to the gym. Let's move to the office. Let's move to the lounge. Let's move over here. Let's get on a tube. Let's get on a train. Let's get on a plane. Let's wander around the house and just sit. And suddenly, the perspective of is that my opinion, Ken, and it's my opinion, is that we're living in a melatonin diminished world. We are not being exposed, whether it's inside or outside. We always know when we look at property, we look at office spaces, bring the outside in.
Right.
We love those places, those spas, those retreats. I mean, last year I was doing something with Hugo Boss and with Gunnar Peterson, the celebrity personal trainer out in LA. And we're doing some podcasts and stuff, and he's the strength and conditioning coach for the Lakers, and there's a whole story there. But it was just like, we're at this retreat in Portugal, And everything is about bringing the outside in. It's like when you're inside, you feel like you're outside.
Right.
And it was like wonderful. And I think that whole concept of this light exposure is, even in CrossFit gyms, even in gyms, all these artificial lights, we think we're in a really bright lit world, but it's nowhere near as much as it is outside. And if you spend, whenever you spend time inside, even in brightly lit rooms and environments, and you just step outside after a few hours and suddenly it classifies like the fresh air, but suddenly you just go, oh, wow, as if you've been released.
Yeah.
You're laughing now, Ken.
I am. Well, because I moved from New York and I now live on an old farm. But no, like with this, everything that's going on, we won't talk about COVID-19, but we're making a huge point to like get out of the house, get our kids running around, play some soccer, and honestly, I've had that feeling, multiple times in the last few days where we finally get outside and it's just like, oh, this is so nice, I guess, is what usually goes through my head. But yeah, I know that exact feeling.
It's not you, Ken, feeling so nice. Is what we have to understand is how our brains are reacting to the change. And there's some science going on at the moment that said it can be as quick as a few minutes.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, whether this is something we should be quoting but whenever any piece of research comes about sleep, there's always this caveat at the bottom, we're still learning about it. So I kind of think that I just feed off things like that. Mm-hmm. Because if me and Ken spend all our day inside an environment and it's brightly lit, a gym, whatever, and we're just looking at this light meter and going, Ken, for all this morning, we've only been, on an average, exposed to like 190 lux.
Yeah.
Now that is just melatonin land. Now, if we just step outside, Ken, and Ken goes, oh, that feels better. And Nick goes, wow, that feels, is it the fresh air? Is it because we're outside? Or is it because suddenly 100,000 lux has ripped into our pineal glands and gone, happy serotonin? I don't know. But it feels like that, Ken, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, you're right. And it, again, goes back to what we were saying. Like a lot of these things that I'm hearing, it's almost like you're waiting for the science to catch up and like validate what's kind of intuitive. If that makes sense.
I'll give you another one not to laugh at if you got time.
Oh, please.
Like I said, not every organization or athlete or player, they're all at different levels. So, we've been trying to redefine it. So instead of thinking about 8 hours a night, we think, let's talk cycles. Mm-hmm. 4 cycles, 5 cycles a day. That sounds a bit more cute. It sounds a bit more emoji, text orientated, the way people communicate today. Instead of using the word nap, we took CRPs, controlled recovery periods. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm on a 5-cycle routine per day, 35 cycles a week. And they come in different ways and everything else. And I grab all my little CRPs and do distracted breaks. Fun. Cool. Language is changing. And then we end up in that little place where you try to define what on earth sleep is all about for them. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you get to that particular point, people start to stop worrying about it. And when they stop worrying, they suddenly realize there's a lot more they can do. They can be far more productive in every single way of their lives. Mm-hmm. But they can also try and find out just how much sleep they actually need. And when do they need it? And why do they need it? And how they can cope with things better. And I would like to think that the position we're in at the moment, there's a lot of really negative consequences that we should all pay due respect to. But there's also some positivity here. That just maybe this is the trigger to use sleeping, to redefine it, to change our approach to it, to help lots of other people around the world, to share that. Because I think right now, this particular subject and what we've been talking about is absolutely key.
Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't agree more. Well, and I think that's even a great place to end. So thank you so much for your time. Hey, and for people who want to know more about you, know more about the work that you do through your company, I'm certainly going to link to the book, but is there anywhere that you would encourage people that they could follow you or get in contact with you?
There certainly is, Ken. I think I lost my drift on the last question you asked.
Oh, that's okay. No.
So I'll just quickly put that in. Please understand that human beings are designed to sleep anywhere, on anything, in any way, anytime. Look at the planet. The other thing is that human beings are not designed to sleep with other human beings. There is the security, there is the spooning, there is the sex, there is waking up in the morning next to somebody, there is all that human relationship, absolutely fine. But when you go into sleep state, you turn away from any other human. You create your own little space because that's about you. And don't forget that. So
it's very
the
true.
Dynamics of putting so much emphasis on your bedroom and your sleeping products and all of those things is a cul-de-sac. There's so many barriers in there. So whilst everybody is, maybe having to work from home, like yourself and everything else.
Yep.
And you got kids and all sorts of stuff. And it's a great time just to examine, maybe if we do all of that sort of stuff, and we sleep in separate rooms maybe, or I just sleep on a sofa. I'm not in my bed. It doesn't mean to say my 8 hours is going to be wrecked. I'm on the sofa doing my R90 cycles. Maybe just, changing your behavior just might mean your whole family's a lot happier.
Yeah.
So, sportsleepcoach.com. We're always providing loads of free content through social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever it might be. We're posting blogs all the time on our site. We've got a set of toolkit services because we know people, don't invest in this area until they have to buy a bed or need to buy a bed or whatever. So, getting people to get involved in this world is not easy. So we've got lots of little things, read the book, listen to the book. Yeah. Do a little product assessment, which is free. Do a little recovery assessment, which is free. You can do a little 10-session course and just listen to me telling you about these 10 steps and just listen
very
to
cool.
them. We're going to be doing webinars. We're going to be doing podcasts like we're doing now.
Oh, perfect.
So I might get you on my podcast to say, what's it like being a parent with 3 kids?
Well, I'd be honored. And that's a good conversation to have because it's completely different and disruptive, but also wonderful at the same time. Yeah.
So we do all of that sort of stuff. And, we're all involved with a very challenging set of times, but it's all about helping people. So I think anybody who's listening to this podcast, probably the podcast with Nick and Ken would be even more beneficial.
Yeah.
So, Ken, how do you deal with this shit?
Yeah, exactly. Well, perfect. So I will, I'll make sure I'm going to link to the website, and I'll link to Instagram and Twitter so that people can follow you there as well. And more than anything, thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ken.
Mommy, you better go ask Mommy, Daddy.
Alrighty. And it is time for everyone's favorite section where we run it by my wife. Hello, Sonia.
Hey, Ken.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing? I just called you Ken. I never call you Ken.
Yeah, it's the second time ever, and now it's recorded. It's documented. Yeah, you call me Kenny. Everyone else calls me Ken, but you still call me Kenny, like I'm 5. So I loved this episode. And one, I just felt like so fortunate that he was willing to come on the show, because I absolutely loved his book. Like everything I said about how I read it, have started to implement, like none of that is BS. Like I actually have really tried to take a lot of the things in his book and like apply it to our sleep routine.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you remember when I was reading that book?
Yeah, a couple years ago, right? Or last year?
Yeah, I think it was last year. But I felt like at the time, the things we were doing really did help, at least me.
The changes we made.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think we addressed a lot of them on the show. It was simple things like, remove the phone before bed, get your room darker, get your room colder, like things that are such easy changes that if you're listening to this, like just do those 3 things.
Yeah, but he kind of said like something contrary to get your room darker. He said more actual daylight is better. Like waking up with the sun is better. Like the camping.
Right. That is true. And that's actually one of the takeaways I had. But no, that's a good point. So yeah, and I like that. And it's, if you go outside, right, even if it's 2 a.m, there's still light. Like, I don't think at any point our ancestors ever had like a completely pitch black environment. Yeah. Right. I think the way I think about it, it's that today we live in a world where, unless you're like in the Arctic Circle or on some remote island, like we just have so much artificial light.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Well, a few weeks ago when we were getting windows replaced in our room and the shades were all down.
Oh yeah.
And even in the night, there was so much light coming in from the moon.
Yeah, there is a lot of light coming in from, that's very true.
When it's a full moon.
But I think the other thing too, and like this is why you can't see the stars, it's like the town, all the street lights throw off so much light. The skyscrapers, our exterior lighting, that we use for like safety purposes, like all that creates, I think, just more light than we historically were exposed to. But to your point, he did mention that it's not that blue light's bad. It's actually like amazing what it can do, right? I think that's what you're trying to say. Mm-hmm. It's that we need to be spending more time in blue light.
Wait,
go ahead.
Is blue light different than daylight?
No, I think it's the same thing. I think that's his point. I think the reason that phones and computer screens get such a bad rap is because they also emit blue light, depending on what setting you have. The issue is that you're just like, you're shoving all that blue light right in front of your face at a time where your body, based on like your circadian rhythm, should be like trying to wind down. You're like stopping it from producing melatonin, as I understood it. Do you remember we talked to Wendy Troxel?
Yep.
Her other thing though with devices was not just like the war on blue light. She was like, it's the emotional reaction that a lot of that content causes.
That's also because it gets your wheels spinning.
Yeah.
When you're supposed to be winding down.
Like if it's work, like you get a bad email and you're like, oh God, like tomorrow I got to wake up early. I got this deadline. Or if it's Instagram, someone's trolling you for your push-up form. No one did, by the way. I was kind of waiting for it, but no one did. So that's that. But you and I have very different opinions.
On blue light?
Yeah. Or do we?
We don't have different opinions. I'm feeding a baby all night. And when I'm breastfeeding him, I need something to keep me awake. So I'm on my phone.
Yeah.
You're not breastfeeding. So
not as often. not for lack of trying. Just give my kids all sorts of complexes. Yeah. And he kind of acknowledged that too. You know what I really liked is he's like, look, this is something that should just happen naturally. Mm-hmm. Like all these wearables, all these devices. He's like, we shouldn't need that. Like humans were designed to sleep anywhere and in any position.
Yeah.
So it's like.
Except for not with other humans, apparently.
Except with other humans. Second time we've heard that. Okay. So we were talking about how couples, again, are not meant to sleep together. People are not meant to sleep together. Let's say that.
Right.
So, I think, I don't know, we do okay. We have a king size bed and we go on opposite ends of it when we both go to sleep.
We try not to bother each other at night.
Yeah, we do all right. I could see, I honestly, I could see why though people do separate beds.
Yeah.
Especially like if you have someone who's a really disruptive sleeper, like neither of us really snore.
I wouldn't mind getting twin beds and just putting them a few feet apart.
Stop it. You're such a liar. Would you?
No, I would not like that. I'm kidding.
You know, maybe we just push them together, spread them apart.
Yeah.
That came out weirder than I wanted. But so, but apparently it is a growing trend, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's wild.
And I get it. So yeah. So what he was saying, blue light, it's actually amazing. It's more about putting in context of like when you're exposing yourself to it. And I work from home and I feel like I need to get outside more.
Yeah.
Even just like little breaks and just like.
It makes you feel so refreshed. Just
yeah,
like walking
it does.
outside.
It's so easy if you're just like staring at your email all day or you're just answering questions and you just like are constantly in front of a screen and you're never getting outside. You know, you just like start to feel like, ugh. Mm-hmm. I need to make like a point to take little breaks. And I think, you know, what he recommends is people need to do that as well or find ways to spend more time outside.
Yeah.
Okay. Blue light solved, people. Questions answered. Mm-hmm. Just kidding. All right. The other big one. And this is kind of why I wanted to have him on the show, because I've personally felt this in my own life over the last few years. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast, quite frankly, is when it comes to like performance of really any kind, but especially athletically, he thinks of 3 kind of core pillars that we need to pay attention to. The first being training. I think a lot of people, you know, they're focusing there. That's not an issue. There's tons of research, a lot of coaching available. Nutrition and hydration. I think we've seen a huge upswell in the last decade. People paying attention to that. A lot of it's trash, but they're paying attention. And the last one that he says is like recovery. And I think there's now a broader awareness about this, but he says like so much more needs to be done in the area of sleep. Like this is where people need to be. They need to, one, make it a third of their focus, but in actuality, it should be prioritized even above the others. So I think that for me was a shift, right? Because I talked about it and I can't remember who I was talking to, one of the guests. But like when I was trying to do everything, like I was eating into my sleep time to try and get other stuff done.
Yeah.
Because it felt like dead, wasted time.
Yeah, which is ending up being detrimental to making progress.
And I feel like now I'm like starting to come around to the idea like that is probably like the best possible use of my time.
Mm-hmm.
You
Sleeping.
know? Well, you are a mother of 3 with an infant. I mean, like how terrible do you feel when you don't get a good night's sleep?
It's debilitating, sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Do you remember having a good night's sleep ever?
Before kids. Yeah. Maybe when we were on vacation last summer, Sans kids.
Ah, yes. Croatia.
Whenever the kids are with my mom and dad, I sleep well.
Yeah.
Cause I'm like, they got this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I'm in charge of the kids, I don't sleep well because I'm constantly checking on them.
Yeah. High vigilance is what I would say.
Yes.
Yeah. It is hard. And who is it? I think Wendy said like that's never going to get shut off. Mm-hmm. Like once you have kids, like that's always on, unfortunately.
I was thinking like maybe when they're in grade school, it'll be better. Cause like what are they really doing in grade school? Then when they're in high school, I'll be freaked out again and I'll constantly be on high alert. But we'll get like a sweet spot in there. And then like when they're married, then we'll feel better too.
Yeah.
But like when they're high school to young adults living probably in New York,
you have to hope.
and
you have to start sleeping better for sure. Like we're in like by far the worst stretch of it.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
I hope so.
It'll get better. I sleep fine. I'm just kidding. Okay, moving on to the last one. So I think we're in agreement there. I love the story and the idea of aggregated marginal gains, right? I'm not going to like retell it because he takes us through it, but you know, it's like, look, if whatever your goal is, if it's be a better parent, like, you know, pay attention to all the areas of your life and see if there's little things that you can do to kind of be, you know, I don't want to use the word productive because it's easy to like over focus on productivity, but like just make improvements because, you know, there's literally a measurable example of, you know, a team who tried to optimize everything and as a result got tremendous results, but it wasn't like huge leaps forward. It was like washing your hands better.
Yeah.
creating a better environment for you to sleep in. I just think that's so interesting.
It's really cool. And it seems a lot more feasible than totally uprooting, like completely changing one or two facets of your life.
Yeah, because I feel like people are always, I'm in that camp, always looking for where can I take like a big chunk, like a big step forward.
Yeah.
You know?
I think everyone's that way. That's why like all these like fad diets and whatnot don't work out because it's too drastic.
Yeah. It just keeps coming back too. Like it's like consistency over time. And it's like, it's really cool. I love that example because I have to imagine like when you're dealing with like the Tour de France or, you know, cycling at the Olympic level, like all these countries, like I doubt their training varies that greatly. Right. So it's like, where on earth can you find an edge in a sport where like milliseconds matter?
Yeah.
It was just so cool that it's like, if you just make little improvements across like a diverse area of your life, it can have like, you know, it's aggregated gains. Like it all adds up. So, you know, it's really kind of relevant right now with everything that's going on with coronavirus. You know, it's like wash your hands more effectively. If you sleep better, your immune system's going to operate better. I love that too. I don't want to touch on this, like this idea of like sleep helps create a more resilient person. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I might steal that and make that a tank top. Or a bumper sticker once we start driving again.
I'll tie-dye it for you.
Yeah. We'll make sure he doesn't hear this part of the show. Yeah. Ooh, we'll post our, we did a bunch of tie-dyeing this weekend. Actually, we've got a minute here. Let's close out the show. Do you want to tell everyone about the new additions to our family who joined the last week? No, the chickens.
Oh, okay.
You're like, what in the?
Oh, yep. So we got some chickens. My parents have a farm about 30 minutes from us, and they're currently quarantined in Palm Beach. And they had, 13 chickens? 14 chickens. So they gave us 5 of them. And yesterday we kept them inside their little coop for a week. And then yesterday was the first day that we free ranged them. And it was a real dilemma trying to get them back inside the coop.
It is awesome having them around.
Yeah, they're so cool.
They are really cool. And they're beautiful.
And we get fresh eggs every day.
Yeah. They're beautiful. Like when you see what an actual chicken looks like that gets to like just exist like kind of in the wild. Like they're not in the wild, but like they have like access to the property. You know, they're not like cooped up and caged and just like producing eggs nonstop. God, they're awesome.
Yeah, they're really cool.
And they are hard to catch. As we learned, we had to employ the entire family. So maybe we'll document some of that for listeners. But I think that is a completely random and great place to stop.
All right. See you later.
All right. Hey, guest next week, Eric Hosmer.
Super cool.
First baseman for the San Diego Padres. If you're on the West Coast, listen up. All right, everybody. Well, hey, stay safe out there. Hope you're enjoying the show, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.